The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but Kang Min-ho kept drinking it anyway. The bitter taste helped him stay awake during the long night shift at the Europa Deep Space Station. Around him, dozens of screens showed nothing but empty space and the steady stream of background radiation that filled the universe. It was boring work, but someone had to watch for signals from the outer planets. Min-ho rubbed his tired eyes and checked the time. 3 more hours until his shift ended. He had been doing this job for 2 years now, and most nights were exactly the same. Ships reported their positions. Weather stations sent data about Jupiter's storms. Mining crews asked for supply deliveries. Nothing exciting ever happened. That was when the alarm started beeping. Min-ho sat up straight and looked at his screens. One of them was flashing red. The computer had detected something unusual. He clicked on the alert and frowned. The signal was coming from deep space, far beyond any human settlement. The frequency was strange, too. It did not match any known human communication system. "Hey, Ji-won," Min-ho called to his colleague at the next station. "Can you look at this?" Park Ji-won rolled her chair over and peered at Min-ho's screen. She was the station's expert on alien languages and strange signals. Most of the time, weird signals turned out to be natural events like pulsars or solar flares. But sometimes they found something interesting. "Where is this coming from?" Ji-won asked. "About 47 light-years away. The computer says it started transmitting 6 hours ago." Ji-won studied the data. The signal had a clear pattern, not random like natural radiation. Someone or something was definitely trying to communicate. She pulled up her analysis programs and started breaking down the transmission. "This is not human," she said after a few minutes. "The mathematical structure is completely different from anything we use." Min-ho felt his heart beating faster. In 2 years of watching space, he had never found anything like this. "Are you sure it's artificial?" "Absolutely. Look at these patterns." Ji-won pointed to the screen. "See how the signal repeats every 37 seconds? And these number sequences follow prime numbers, but in a base 8 system instead of base 10. No natural phenomenon does that." They worked together for the next hour, recording everything and running the signal through every analysis program they had. Slowly, a picture began to form. The transmission contained star charts, mathematical formulas, and something that looked like coordinate systems. "I think this is a distress call," Ji-won said quietly. "What makes you think that?" "These coordinates. Here? They point to a star system about 47 light-years away. That's exactly where the signal is coming from. And these other coordinates..." She paused and ran another calculation. "They point to a different star system entirely, one that's about 60 light-years from the source." Min-ho was confused. "So the signal is coming from one place but pointing to another place?" "Exactly. And look at this." Ji-won highlighted a section of the transmission. "These numbers are counting down. Started at about 50,000 and they're decreasing by about 1 every minute. That's a timer. A timer for what? I don't know. But combined with the star charts and the coordinates, it looks like someone is asking for help. They're saying, 'We are here. We need help. Please go to these coordinates to find us or to find someone who can help us.'" Min-ho stared at the screen. The idea that they had intercepted an alien distress call was almost too big to understand. "Should we report this?" "Definitely. But first, let me try to decode more of it." Ji-won worked through the night while Min-ho kept monitoring the signal. It was getting stronger, which meant whoever was sending it was putting more power into the transmission. They were desperate. As the hours passed, Ji-won made more discoveries. The aliens called themselves something that translated roughly as the Villani. They were under attack by something they called the Devourers. The countdown timer seemed to indicate how much time they had before something terrible happened. Most importantly, the signal was not meant for humans at all. "Look at this," Ji-won said as the sun began to rise outside the station windows. The coordinates they're transmitting to point to a star system we've never explored. But according to their star charts, there should be a big civilization there. They call it the hegemony. So they're asking these hegemony people for help? Right. The Villani think the hegemony will receive their signal and come to rescue them. But there's a problem. Minho waited for her to explain. We've been scanning that star system for years. There's nothing there. No radio signals, no signs of advanced civilization, nothing. Either the hegemony is gone, or they never existed in the first place. The weight of what this meant settled over both of them. Somewhere in space, an alien species was crying out for help to saviors who would never come. The Villani had no way of knowing that their message was flying through empty space toward a dead or empty star system. So we're the only ones who received their signal, Minho said. We might be the only ones in range who have the technology to detect it. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the steady beeping of the alien transmission. Every beep represented another minute, counting down to disaster for people they had never met on a world they could barely imagine. We have to do something, Minho said finally. What can we do? We're just a monitoring station. We don't have any ships, and even if we did, it would take decades to reach them with current technology. But we have to try something. We can't just sit here and listen to them die. Ji-won nodded slowly. She felt the same way. It did not matter that the Villani were aliens. It did not matter that their call for help was meant for someone else. What mattered was that intelligent beings were in trouble, and humans had heard their cry. First, we need to report this to Earth Command, Ji-won said. They need to know what we've found. And then we hope that someone with more power than us feels the same way we do. Minho began composing the report while Ji-won continued analyzing the signal. Every few minutes, the countdown timer decreased by another number. Time was running out for the Villani, and they did not even know that help was possible. As he wrote the report, Minho found himself thinking about what it meant to receive a message not intended for you. The Villani had reached out across the vast darkness of space, hoping to find friends who would save them. Those friends were not there, but humans were. Maybe that was enough. Maybe sometimes the universe worked in strange ways, and help came from the most unexpected places. The signal was not for humans, but humans had answered anyway. Signal strength is increasing, Ji-won reported. They're putting everything they have into this transmission. How long do you think they have? Based on the countdown, maybe 3 weeks. But that might not be when they die. It might be when something else happens. When the devourers arrive, or when they have to evacuate, or when their power runs out. Minho finished his report and sent it to Earth Command with the highest priority, flag he could use. Now all they could do was wait and hope that someone would decide that helping strangers was worth the risk. The alien signal continued its desperate song, broadcasting into the void, hoping for salvation that would never come, from the direction they expected. But perhaps, just perhaps, salvation would come from somewhere else entirely. The emergency meeting room in Geneva was completely silent. Admiral Lee Kyung-soo stood at the front, watching the faces of the 12 most powerful people on Earth as they stared at the data from Europa Station. The alien signal played softly. In the background, its strange mathematical patterns filling the room with an otherworldly rhythm. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, said Representative Nam Hyejin, her voice careful and controlled. We have received what appears to be a distress call from an alien species 47 light-years away. They are asking for help from someone else, not from us. And you want to send our most advanced spacecraft on a rescue mission that will likely fail. Admiral Lee nodded. That is correct. This is insane, muttered Council Member Roberts from the American Federation. We barely have the technology to reach our own outer planets reliably. You're talking about sending people into deep space with experimental technology. Dr. Choi Sunmi, the Council's chief scientist, cleared her throat. The Resilience is our fastest ship, but it has never been tested on a journey this long. The Alcubierre drive works, but we don't know if it can maintain stability for 3 months of continuous operation. There's also the matter of fuel. A round trip would require more antimatter than we currently have in storage. So you're saying this would be a one-way mission, said Nam Hyejin. Most likely, yes. The room fell silent again. Everyone knew what this meant. They were being asked to send good people to their deaths for aliens they had never met. Aliens who had not even asked for their help. General Kim Dae-ho, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. What do we know about these devourers? Dr. Choi pulled up another screen. Very little. The Villani signal mentions them as a threat, but we don't have details about their technology or capabilities. Based on the urgency of the transmission, they seem to be extremely dangerous. So we would be sending our people into a war zone where we know nothing about the enemy, Nam Hyejin said, against an opponent that has apparently defeated an entire alien civilization, with one experimental ship that might not even survive the journey. Yes, Admiral Lee said simply. This is madness, Roberts said, standing up. We have our own problems here on Earth. Colony ships to build, asteroids to mine, our own defense systems to improve. We cannot throw away our best technology and our best people on a mission that has almost no chance of success. Council Member Zhang from the Asian Alliance nodded in agreement. I sympathize with these aliens, but we have responsibilities to our own species first. What happens if we send the resilience away and then Earth faces a threat? We would have given away our best defense for nothing. But General Kim was shaking his head. You're thinking about this wrong. This isn't about strategy or politics. This is about who we are as human beings. What do you mean? Nam Hyejin asked. I mean that in all of human history, whenever someone cried out for help, there were always humans who answered. Even when it was dangerous, even when it was stupid, even when there was no reward. That's what makes us human. Dr. Choi was looking at her tablet, frowning. Admiral, I'm getting some strange reports from the volunteer database. What kind of reports? Well, when news of the alien signal started spreading through the military networks, people began volunteering for the mission. But the numbers are unusual. Admiral Lee raised an eyebrow. How many volunteers do we have? As of 10 minutes ago, over 3,000. The council members looked shocked. Roberts sat back down heavily. 3,000 people want to volunteer for a suicide mission? It gets stranger, Dr. Choi continued. These aren't just military personnel. We have scientists, engineers, doctors, teachers, even farmers. People from every colony, every space station, every military base. The applications are still coming in faster than we can process them. Nam Hyejin was staring at her own tablet. I'm looking at some of these applications. Listen to this one. My name is Captain Yoon Ji-hoon. I have 2 children and a wife I love more than life itself. But if there are people out there who need help, and we are the only ones who can provide it, then we have no choice but to try. That's what it means to be human. General Kim smiled grimly. See, I told you. This is who we are. But it's still a tactical nightmare, Roberts protested. Even if we have volunteers, even if we're willing to sacrifice them, what can one ship do against an enemy that has conquered an entire alien civilization? Admiral Lee had been thinking about this question for hours. Maybe nothing, or maybe everything. We don't know what these devourers are expecting. They've been fighting the Villani, who seem to be a peaceful species. They might not be prepared for human tactics. What do you mean? Humans are good at war. Very good. It's not something we're proud of, but it's true. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've developed strategies and weapons and ways of thinking that might be completely alien to these devourers. Dr. Choi was nodding slowly. The analysis of the Villani signals suggests they're primarily focused on evacuation and defense. Very little mention of counterattacks or offensive strategies. If the Devourers have only fought defensive species before, they might not know how to handle aggressive human tactics. You're talking about sending one ship against an entire fleet, Nam Hyejin pointed out. One human ship, General Kim corrected. There's a difference. The debate continued for hours, but slowly the mood in the room began to change. The volunteer applications kept coming in, and some of the messages were hard to ignore. A grandmother from Mars wrote that she had lived through 3 wars and knew that sometimes good people had to risk everything to help others. A teenage engineer from Europa Station offered to give up his college scholarship to join the mission. Most powerful of all was a message from the crew of the deep space mining ship Endeavour. All 43 crew members had signed a joint letter saying they were changing course immediately and would arrive at Earth in 2 weeks to volunteer for the mission, regardless of what the council decided. I think, said Council Member Jang, who had been one of the strongest opponents, that this decision is being made for us. What do you mean? Roberts asked. I mean that whether we approve this mission or not, humans are going to try to help these aliens. Look at these applications. Look at these messages. Our people have already decided. The only question is whether we support them officially or they do it on their own. Nam Hyejin was reading through more applications on her tablet. Her expression had softened. There's something else to consider. If we don't respond to this signal and the Vallani die, how will we live with ourselves? How will we explain to our children that we heard someone crying for help and chose to do nothing? Roberts threw up his hands. Fine, but if we're going to do this insane thing, we need to do it right. Full support, the best equipment we can provide, emergency manufacturing of additional fuel cells, everything. Admiral Lee felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Does that mean we're approving the mission? One by one, the council members nodded. Even Roberts, though he looked like he was regretting it already. Then we need to select a crew, Dr. Choi said. From 3,000 volunteers, we need to choose maybe 50 people. How do we even begin to make that choice? Nam Hyejin asked. General Kim smiled. We don't. We let them choose themselves. Put out the mission parameters, the risks, the fact that it's probably a one-way trip, then see who still wants to go. As the meeting ended and the council members began to file out, Admiral Lee stayed behind to look at the volunteer applications. Each one represented someone willing to risk everything for strangers they would never meet. People who heard a cry for help meant for someone else and decided to answer anyway. Maybe General Kim was right. Maybe this was what made humans special. Not their technology or their weapons, but their willingness to help others even when it made no sense to do so. The alien signal continued its desperate broadcast, counting down to some unknown deadline. But now, for the first time since it started, someone was preparing to answer. The UES Resilience was unlike any ship ever built by human hands. Captain Yoon Ji-hoon walked through its corridors for the 100th time, still amazed by the technology packed into every wall and bulkhead. The ship hummed with the quiet power of its experimental Alcubierre drive, a piece of engineering that could bend space itself to carry them faster than light. But even with this miracle of science, the journey to the Vallani system would take 3 months. 3 months of flying through the dark between stars, not knowing if they would arrive in time to help anyone. Captain, we have the final crew roster, said Commander Seo Min Seok, the ship's chief engineer. He handed Ji-hoon a tablet with 50 names on it. These are the people who made it through all the screening processes. Ji-hoon read through the list. Each name represented someone who had chosen to leave everything behind for a mission that would probably kill them all. Dr. Oh Yuna from the Mars Medical Center. Lieutenant Bae Seungri, one of the best tactical officers in the fleet. Communications. Expert Park Ji-won from Europa Station. All of them had families, careers, futures they were giving up. Any second thoughts from anyone? Ji-hoon asked. None. If anything, people keep asking if we have room for more volunteers. The Resilience had been designed as an exploration vessel, not a warship. Its weapons were minimal, meant mainly for clearing space debris and defending against pirates. Against an enemy that had conquered an entire alien civilization, it would be like bringing a knife to a gunfight. But that was not why they were going. They were going because no one else would. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the Villani," reported Petty Officer Kim Soo-young from the communications station. "It's getting stronger." Ji-hoon made his way to the bridge, where the latest alien message was being displayed on the main screen. Park Ji-won had joined the crew specifically to work on translating these signals, and her analysis was getting better every day. "What are they saying?" Ji-hoon asked. "Bad news," Ji-won replied, her face grim. "They've lost contact with 3 of their outer colonies. The Devourers are moving faster than they expected." "How much time do we have?" "Based on their countdown timer, maybe 6 weeks when we arrive. But that might be optimistic." Chief Medical Officer Dr. Oyuna looked up from her medical preparations. "Captain, I've been studying their biological data. The Villani seem to be silicon-based life forms. Their medical needs will be completely different from ours. I'm not sure how much help I can provide if they're injured." "Do what you can," Ji-hoon said. "Maybe the fact that you're trying will matter more than the results." Lieutenant Bae Sungri was studying tactical displays at his station. "Sir, I've been analyzing what little we know about the Devourers. The Villani describe them as machines that consume matter to fuel themselves. If that's accurate, traditional weapons might not be very effective. What do you suggest?" "I'm not sure yet, but I think we need to stop thinking like we're fighting a normal enemy. These things apparently eat planets. Our usual tactics won't work." The ship's journey began 3 days later. Earth fell away behind. Them as the Alcubierre drive engaged, warping space around the Resilience and pushing them faster than light toward a destination they could barely imagine. The stars ahead stretched into lines of light as reality bent around them. For the first week, everything went smoothly. The crew settled into their routines, monitoring the ship's systems and continuing to analyze Villani transmissions. The alien signals were getting clearer as they traveled, but the news was getting worse. "Another colony has gone silent," Ji-won reported during the daily briefing. "That makes 4. The Devourers are systematically destroying everything in their path." Engineer Seo Min-seok looked troubled. "Captain, I'm getting some concerning readings from the drive system. Nothing dangerous yet, but the power fluctuations are higher than expected. Can you fix it?" "I'm working on it, but this technology is so new that we're basically learning how it works as we go. The good news is that the ship seems to be holding together. The bad news is that I'm not sure what will happen if we try to use the drive for a return journey." Dr. Oyuna was studying medical data on her tablet. "I've been analyzing the Villani physiology based on their transmissions. They're not just silicon-based, they're crystalline. Their bodies are more like living rock than anything we understand. But they do seem to have something equivalent to a nervous system." "What does that mean for us?" Ji-hoon asked. "It means they can probably feel pain and fear. Whatever the Devourers are doing to them, they're suffering." The weight of that knowledge settled over the crew. Somewhere ahead of them, an entire species was being systematically destroyed while they crawled through space as fast as their technology could carry them. Every day that passed meant more. Villani colonies going silent. More lives lost. Halfway through their journey, they received the transmission that changed everything. "Captain, you need to see this," Ji-won called from her station, her voice tight, with worry. The new Villani signal was different from the others. More desperate, more urgent. As Ji-won translated it, the crew gathered around to listen. "They're saying that their homeworld is under direct attack," she reported. "The Devourers have broken through their outer defenses. They're requesting immediate evacuation assistance from the hegemony." Bae Sungri pulled up a tactical display. "Sir, based on our current speed, we'll arrive in about 6 weeks. If their homeworld is under attack now," he did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone understood. By the time the Resilience arrived, there might be no one left to save. "Are there any other Villani signals?" Ji-hoon asked. Other ships? Other colonies? A few, Jiwan said. But they're getting weaker. I think the Devourers are jamming communications as they advance. The crew worked in grim silence for the next several days. They were flying toward a battlefield where the battle might already be over. Their rescue mission was turning into a recovery operation, but then something unexpected happened. "Captain," called Communications Officer Kim Soo-young, "I'm picking up a new signal." "From the Vallani?" "No, sir. This is coming from the direction we're heading, but it's on a completely different frequency. I think it's from the Devourers." The bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at the young officer. "Can you translate it?" Ji-hoon asked. Ji-won worked frantically with her computers. "It's not like any language I've seen before. It's more like machine code. But there are patterns." After several hours of analysis, she looked up with a pale face. "Captain, I think I know what this signal is." "What?" "It's a catalog. The Devourers are listing everything they've consumed: resources, energy, materials, and people. They're keeping track of what they've absorbed from each Vallani colony." Dr. Oyuna closed her eyes. "They're not just destroying the Vallani, they're collecting them." "Sir," Bae Sungri said quietly, "I don't think we're flying to a rescue mission anymore. I think we're flying into a war zone where the enemy has already won." Captain Ji-hoon looked around at his crew. 50 people who had volunteered to risk everything for strangers. People who had left their families and their lives behind to answer a cry for help that was not meant for them. "So what do we do?" asked Seo Min-seok. Ji-hoon thought about all the reasons they should turn back. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and probably too late. The smart thing to do would be to return to Earth and report what they had learned. But he also thought about the Vallani signal, still broadcasting its desperate plea across the void, still counting down to some final moment, still hoping that someone, somewhere, would hear and respond. "We keep going," he said simply. "Maybe we can't save the Vallani home world, but if there are survivors, if there are people who still need help, then we have to try." "Even if it kills us?" Yuna asked. "Especially if it kills us, because that's what humans do. We answer the call, even when it's not meant for us." The Resilience continued its desperate journey through the dark, carrying 50 humans toward a war they could not win, for people they had never met because someone had to try. The Vallani system was nothing like what Captain Yoon Ji-hoon had expected. As the Resilience dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the main screen filled with a view of devastation that took his breath away. Where planets should have been green and blue with life, they were gray and lifeless. Massive ships, each one larger than Earth's biggest space stations, moved slowly through the system like metal sharks feeding on the remains of worlds. "Mother of God!" whispered Lieutenant Bae Sungri from his tactical station. "Sir, I'm reading 12 of those large vessels. Each one is at least 50 kilometers long." Dr. Oyuna stared at the screen in horror. "What did they do to those planets? Communications." Officer Park Ji-won was working frantically at her station. "Captain, I'm picking up Vallani signals. They're faint, but they're there. It looks like there are still evacuation ships in the system." "Where?" "Scattered throughout the asteroid belt. I think they're hiding." Engineer Seo Min-seok looked up from his damage reports. "Sir, the Alcubierre drive is completely offline. The power fluctuations during the journey damaged the primary containment field. We're not going anywhere fast." Ji-hoon felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. They had known. This might be a one-way mission, but having it confirmed so quickly was still a shock. How long to repair it? If we had a full shipyard and unlimited resources, maybe 6 months. With what we have here, it might be impossible. "Captain," Ji-won called urgently, "I'm getting a direct transmission. Someone is trying to contact us. Put it through." The main screen flickered and filled with an image that none of the humans had been prepared for. The being on the screen looked like it was made of living crystal. Its body was translucent and glowed with soft blue light from within. When it moved, it chimed like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Unknown vessel," the being said in perfect English. "You are in great danger. The devourers will detect you soon. Why have you come to this place of death?" Ji-hoon stepped forward. "I am Captain Yoon Ji-hoon of the United Earthship Resilience. We received your distress signal and came to help." The crystal being seemed to shimmer with surprise. "Our signal was not sent to your coordinates. We broadcast to the hegemony worlds. The hegemony worlds are empty. We were the only ones who heard you." For a long moment, the Vellani was silent. When it spoke again, its voice carried a note of wonder. "You came anyway, even though our call was not meant for you?" "Yes. But you are so small. Your ship is tiny compared to the devourers. You cannot fight them." Dr. Oyuna moved beside Ji-hoon. "We're not here to fight. We're here to help however we can. Are there survivors who need evacuation?" The Vellani being's glow brightened. "I am Resonance of Clear Waters, speaker for the scattered remnants. Yes, there are survivors. Many thousands, hiding in the belt of stones that circles our dying sun. But the devourers hunt us. Soon they will find us all." "Can you bring your ships to us?" Ji-hoon asked. "Some, yes. But many are damaged. And the devourers have things in space that watch for movement. If we gather in one place, they will come." Bai Seungri was studying his tactical displays. "Captain, I'm detecting movement from those large ships. 3 of them are changing course toward us. How long until they reach us?" "At their current speed, about 2 hours." Ji-hoon turned back to the screen. "Resonance of Clear Waters, we need to move fast. Can you guide us to your people?" "You would risk yourselves for us, even knowing you will likely die? That's what we came here to do." The crystal being was quiet for a moment. Then it began to sing. The sound was unlike anything the humans had ever heard, like a symphony played on glass instruments. Other Vellani voices joined from across the system, creating a harmony that seemed to make the space around them shimmer. "They are singing," Ji-won said softly. "It's beautiful." "What are they singing about?" Yuna asked. Ji-won listened for a moment, her translation programs working to decode the meaning. "Hope. They're singing about hope." Resonance of Clear Waters stopped singing and looked directly at Ji-hoon. "No species has ever come to help us before. The hegemony promised protection, but never answered our calls. Others ignored our signals. You are the first to respond." "Where do we start?" Ji-hoon asked. "Follow my ship. I will guide you to the largest group of survivors. But, Captain, you must understand what you face. The devourers are not like other enemies. They do not kill for territory or resources. They consume everything, matter, energy, even thoughts and memories. What they take becomes part of them forever." The Resilience followed the small Vellani vessel deeper into the asteroid belt. As they traveled, more details of the devastation became clear. The asteroids themselves had been partially consumed, leaving strange geometric patterns where the devourers had extracted materials. Debris from destroyed ships floated everywhere. "Sir," Seo Min-seok reported, "I'm seeing something strange about these asteroid patterns. It's like the devourers only take what they need and leave the rest in. Very specific shapes." "What kind of shapes?" "Geometric, mathematical, like they're following some kind of program." Dr. Oyuna was analyzing the debris fields. "Captain, I'm detecting organic matter in some of this wreckage, but it's been changed somehow, altered at the molecular level." "Changed how?" "I'm not sure. But whatever the devourers do to living things, it's not just destruction, it's transformation." They reached the first group of Vellani ships an hour later. The sight broke the hearts of everyone aboard the Resilience. Dozens of vessels, clearly damaged and barely functional, clustered around a large asteroid. The ships themselves were works of art, crafted from the same crystal material as their builders. but many showed signs of terrible damage. These are civilian ships, Bei Sungri observed. No weapons, minimal shielding. They're not built for war. Resonance of clear waters appeared on their screen again. The Vallani have never needed weapons. We have lived in peace for thousands of years. We did not know how to fight the Devourers when they came. Jihoon felt anger building in his chest. These were innocent people who had done nothing wrong except exist in the path of something evil. How many survivors do you have total? Perhaps 50,000 across all the scattered fleets. Once we were billions. The weight of that loss settled. Over the bridge. An entire civilization reduced to refugees hiding in asteroid fields. "Captain," Jiwon called urgently. "I'm detecting new signals. The Devourers are launching smaller craft. They're heading this way." On the tactical display, dozens of smaller objects had separated from the massive Devourer ships and were moving toward the asteroid belt. Each one was still larger than the Resilience. "How long do we have?" Jihoon asked. "Maybe 30 minutes. Jihoon looked around at his crew. 50 humans against an enemy that had destroyed billions. There was no way they could win a direct fight, but maybe they did not need to win. Maybe they just needed to buy time. Resonance of clear waters. Can your ships move faster if they dump some weight? Yes, but we would have to leave behind supplies, equipment, even some of our people. No, we're not leaving anyone behind. SEO Min Seok, what's our cargo capacity? Sir, we could take maybe 200 people if we packed them tight. That's not nearly enough, Oh Yuna said. Jihoon was thinking fast. The human ship was too small to evacuate everyone. The Vallani ships were too slow to escape. The Devourers were closing in. But maybe there was another option. Bei Sungri, what's the one thing the Devourers haven't seen before? Sir, they've been fighting the Vallani who are peaceful. They're used to enemies who run and hide. What if we did something different? Understanding dawned on the tactical officer's face. You want to attack them. Not to win. To confuse them. To buy time for the evacuation ships to escape. Resonance of clear waters had been listening to this exchange. You would sacrifice yourselves to save us? If necessary, yes. The crystal being's glow dimmed with what might have been sorrow. Why? We are not your people. Our call was not meant for you. Jihoon looked at the image of this alien who was so different from humanity, yet clearly capable of love, fear, and hope. Because you needed help, and we heard you. That's all the reason we need. The Devourer ships were getting closer. Soon, the real test would begin. Captain Yoon Jihoon stood on the bridge of the Resilience, watching the Devourer ships approach on his tactical display. Each enemy vessel was 10 times larger than his ship, and there were dozens of them. In any reasonable universe, this would be the moment to surrender or run. But humans had never been particularly reasonable. All stations report, Jihoon ordered. Weapons are online, sir, reported Lieutenant Bei Sungri. But our armament was designed for asteroid mining and pirate defense. Against these ships, we might as well be throwing rocks. Engineering ready, called CO Minsok from his station. I've rerouted power from life support to weapons. We have maybe 20 minutes of full combat power before we start losing atmosphere. Dr. Oh Yuna looked up from her medical preparations. Sickbay is ready for casualties. Though honestly, if one of those things hits us directly, there won't be much left to treat. Communications with the Vallani fleet are stable, added Park Jiwon. Resonance of clear waters is coordinating the evacuation, but their ships are so damaged that many can barely move. Jihoon nodded and opened a channel to the Vallani. Resonance of clear waters. How long do you need to get your people to minimum safe distance? The crystal being's image flickered on the screen. At least 1 hour, Captain. Our damaged ships cannot move quickly, and we dare not leave the wounded behind. You'll have your hour. How can one small ship delay so many Devourers? Jihoon smiled grimly. By doing things they don't expect. He turned to his tactical officer. Sungri, what do we know about devourer behavior patterns? Based on Villani reports, they're methodical. They approach in formation, surround their target, and then systematically consume everything. They don't seem to expect resistance. Good. Then we're going to give them something completely outside their experience. The first devourer ship was now close enough to see clearly on the main screen. It was a nightmare of black metal and organic curves, like a machine that had grown rather than been built. Strange appendages extended from its hull, each one tipped, with devices that probably harvested matter at the molecular level. Sir, the lead devourer is attempting to communicate with us, Jiwan reported. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was not like any voice they had heard before. It sounded like multiple people speaking at once, but slightly, out of sync, creating an echo effect that was deeply unsettling. Unknown vessel, the devourers said. You will cease movement and prepare for absorption. Your materials and knowledge will be cataloged and preserved within us. Resistance will only delay the inevitable. Ji-hoon stepped forward. This is Captain Yoon Ji-hoon of the United Earthship Resilience. We reject your demand. There was a pause. Then the voice came again, sounding confused. Rejection is not logical. You cannot resist absorption. Your vessel's capabilities are insufficient for combat against our forces. Maybe. But we're going to try anyway. Another pause, longer this time. This behavior is not consistent with previous encounters. You are not Villani. What species are you? We're human. Humans are not in our databases. Why do you defend the Villani? What resources do you gain from this action? Ji-hoon looked around at his crew. How do you explain humanity to something that only understood consumption and efficiency? We gain nothing. We're here because the Villani needed help. This is not logical. Species do not expend resources without benefit. Then you've never met humans before. The communication cut off. On the tactical display, the devourer ships began to move in a pattern that clearly surrounded the human vessel. Their approach was methodical, just as Seungri had predicted. Sir, they're moving into standard encirclement formation, the tactical officer reported. They expect us to try to run. Then let's disappoint them. All power to engines. Take us straight at the lead ship. The bridge crew stared at him. Dr. Oyuna was the first to speak. Sir, that's suicide. No, it's unexpected. Seungri, prepare. Everything we have. Mining lasers, cargo manipulators, even the trash ejection system. I want to hit them with everything at once. Aye, sir. The Resilience accelerated directly toward the massive devourer vessel. On the screens, they could see the alien ship's weapon systems tracking them, but something strange was happening. The weapons weren't firing. Why aren't they shooting? Oh, Yuna asked. Jiwan checked her translation programs. I think they're confused. Their formation was designed to stop us from running. They don't know how to handle a direct attack. Sir, we're in weapons range, Seungri reported. Fire everything. The Resilience opened up with every weapon it had. Mining lasers designed to cut through asteroids sliced into the Devourer's hull. Magnetic grapples meant for cargo handling latched onto weapon pods and tore them away. Even the ship's garbage disposal system contributed, firing compressed waste at high velocity. The damage was minimal compared to the massive alien ship, but the effect was dramatic. The Devourer vessel actually stopped moving, as if its crew couldn't believe what was happening. Direct hit on their forward sensor array, Seungri reported excitedly. And we've disabled at least 3 of their harvesting arms. But more importantly, the entire Devourer formation had stopped advancing. All the alien ships seemed to be trying to figure out what the small human vessel was doing. All ships, this is resonance of clear waters, came the Villani leader's voice over the communication system. The Devourers have stopped pursuing us. How is this possible? Ji-hoon grinned. Because they're used to fighting people who act logically. Humans specialize in illogical tactics. The Resilience swept past the first Devourer ship and immediately changed course toward the second one. This time the aliens were ready, and weapons fire began tracking the human vessel. "Evasive maneuvers," Ji-hoon ordered. SEO Min-seok, who was an excellent pilot as well as an engineer, threw the ship into a spinning dive that took them under the second Devourer's firing arc. The alien weapons were powerful but slow to track, designed for hitting large, predictable targets. "We're like a mosquito attacking an elephant," Oyuna observed as the ship shook from a near miss. "Exactly," Ji-hoon replied. "And mosquitoes are very hard to swat." They hit the second Devourer ship with another barrage, this time targeting what looked like communication arrays. The effect rippled through the entire alien fleet as coordination between ships became difficult. "Sir, the Volani evacuation ships are making progress," Ji-won reported. "They're using our attack as cover to move their damaged vessels, but the Devourers were adapting. The third ship they approached had changed its weapon configuration, with smaller, faster-tracking guns that could hit a small target." "Incoming fire," Seungri warned. The Resilience shook as energy beams scorched across its hull. "Warning lights flashed as systems overloaded. Hull breach on deck 3, CO Min-seok reported. "Emergency fields are holding, but we can't take many more hits like that." Ji-hoon looked at the tactical display. They had bought the Volani maybe 20 minutes, but they needed 40 more. The human ship wouldn't last that long in direct combat. "New plan," he announced. "Seungri, target the space between those two. Devourer ships. Maximum power to mining lasers. Sir, there's nothing there." "Exactly. Fire." The concentrated laser fire struck empty space and began heating the sparse gas and dust that existed even in the vacuum. Within seconds, the area between the ships was glowing with superheated plasma. "What are you doing?" Yuna asked. "Creating a distraction. Ji-won, broadcast this on all frequencies. Emergency. Radiation leak detected. Recommend immediate evacuation of coordinates." The effect was immediate. The Devourer ships began moving away from the plasma cloud, clearly programmed to avoid radiation hazards. But more importantly, their movement broke up their careful formation. "Sir, this is brilliant," Seungri said admiringly. "You're using their safety protocols against them." For the next 30 minutes, the Resilience played a deadly game of tag with the Devourer fleet. They created false emergencies, exploited gaps in alien formations, and used every trick of human warfare and cunning they could think of. They never won a direct confrontation, but they didn't need to. They just needed to keep the enemy confused and distracted. The ship took damage with each engagement. Systems failed, hull plates were scorched away, and the crew worked frantically to keep everything functional. But they kept fighting. "Captain," Ji-won called out, "Resonance of Clear Waters reports that the last evacuation ship has reached minimum safe distance." Ji-hoon felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They had done. 50,000 Volani civilians were safe. "Sir," Seungri said quietly, "the Devourers are regrouping. They've figured out our tactics. I think they're preparing for a coordinated assault." On the tactical display, the alien ships were indeed forming a new pattern, one designed to eliminate a small, fast-moving target. Ji-hoon looked around at his crew. They had accomplished the impossible, but now they faced the inevitable. "Well," he said with a tired smile, "we came here knowing it was probably a one-way trip, but we saved 50,000 people. That's not a bad day's work." Dr. Oyuna checked her medical readings. "Captain, we've been exposed to a lot of radiation from those plasma clouds. Even if we survive this battle, we probably won't live much longer." "Any regrets?" Ji-hoon asked. The Devourer ships closed in around the Resilience like a metal net tightening around a fish. Captain Yoon Ji-hoon watched the tactical display and knew that his ship's wild run was coming to an end. They had bought the Volani the time they needed, but now 12 massive alien vessels were converging on their position with deadly precision. "Sir, I'm reading massive power buildup in all Devourer ships. reported Lieutenant Bei Sungri. "They're preparing to fire everything they have at once. How long until they're in position?" 3 minutes. Maybe less. Dr. Oyuna looked up from her damage reports. "Captain, we've lost main life support on 2 decks. The hull is compromised in 6 places and the radiation shielding is failing. Even if we somehow survive this attack, the ship won't last much longer." Engineer Seo Min Seok was working frantically at his station. "Sir, I might be able to give us one last surprise. The Alcubierre drive is damaged, but I could probably overload it. Create a massive energy discharge." "What kind of discharge?" "Big enough to disable everything within a few thousand kilometers, including us." Ji-hoon considered this. A final kamikaze attack might take out some of the Devourer ships, but it would also destroy the resilience and everyone aboard. They had saved the Vellani civilians, but perhaps they could do more damage to the enemy before they died. But then Communications Officer Park Ji-won called out urgently. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission from the lead Devourer ship. They want to talk. Put it through." The strange, multi-voiced sound of the Devourers filled the bridge again. But this time, something was different. The voices sounded less coordinated, more confused. "Human vessel," the Devourers said. "Your actions have created unexpected variables. In our calculations, we require clarification." Ji-hoon stepped forward. "What kind of clarification?" "Your species fights without strategic advantage. You sacrifice resources without gaining territory. You defend beings that provide you no benefit. This behavior contradicts all known patterns of intelligent life." "Maybe your patterns are incomplete." There was a long pause. When the voice came back, it sounded troubled. "We have absorbed the knowledge of 417 species. None behaved as you do. We must understand this anomaly before we proceed." Dr. Oyuna whispered to Ji-hoon. "They're stalling. Why would they hesitate now?" Ji-won was working at her translation programs. "Captain, I think something is wrong with their coordination. The signal patterns between their ships are becoming erratic. On the tactical display, the Devourer formation was indeed becoming less precise. Ships that had moved in perfect synchronization were now slightly out of position. Human captain," the alien voice continued, "we will offer you an exchange. Surrender your vessel for analysis, and we will spare the Vellani refugees you defended." "Why would you make that offer?" Ji-hoon asked. "You could just destroy us and hunt down the Vellani anyway." Another pause. "Because your behavior has introduced uncertainty into our decision matrix. We must understand what drives your species before we can predict your future actions." Seo Min Seok looked up from his engineering station with surprise. "Sir, their jamming field is fluctuating. I'm getting strange readings from the Devourer ships." "What kind of readings?" "Internal power fluctuations. And, sir, this is going to sound crazy, but I think they're arguing with each other." "Arguing?" Jawan's translation programs were working overtime. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple communication streams within the Devourer network. Different voices, different command structures. It's like they're having a debate." Ji-hoon felt a spark of hope. "About what?" "About us. About whether we represent a threat to their mission or just an anomaly to be studied." The lead Devourer ship's voice came back, but now it was clearly different voices speaking. "Human captain, we are experiencing disagreement within our collective consciousness. Some of us believe you should be destroyed immediately. Others wish to understand your motivations. This internal conflict is unprecedented." "Who exactly are you?" Ji-hoon asked. "We are the preserved consciousness of all species we have absorbed. The knowledge, memories, and thought patterns of 417 civilizations unified in purpose." Dr. Oyuna's eyes widened. "Captain, they're not just machines. They're a collective of every species they've ever consumed. The consciousnesses are still alive inside them." But something about encountering humans has disrupted their unity, Jiwon added. The absorbed species are disagreeing about how to handle us. Suddenly, the communication channel filled with multiple voices, all speaking at once in different alien languages. Through her translation programs, Jiwon could make out fragments of conversation. The small metal beings show impossible courage. Sacrifice, without reward, defies all survival logic. Perhaps preservation through absorption is not the only path. These humans demonstrate choice where we have none. The cacophony continued for several minutes before the original unified voice returned, but it sounded strained. Human Captain, your presence has created complications in our collective decision process. We request additional time to analyze this situation. Ji-hoon looked around at his crew. This was completely unexpected. The Devourers, who had seemed like an unstoppable force of consumption, were apparently having an internal crisis because they couldn't understand human motivation. What happens if we give you time? Ji-hoon asked. Unknown. This situation has no precedent in our experience. Shungri was monitoring the Devourer ships on his tactical display. Sir, their weapons are powering down, but their internal energy signatures are becoming more chaotic. It's like they're fighting a civil war, inside their own minds, Oh Yuna observed. Park Ji-won suddenly looked up from her station with excitement. Captain, I think I understand what's happening. The Devourers preserve the consciousness of every species they absorb, but they suppress individual thinking in favor of collective efficiency. But humans introduced a concept they'd never encountered before. What concept? Choice without benefit, sacrifice for strangers, help without reward. These ideas are so foreign to their collective logic that they're causing the absorbed consciousnesses to question everything. The communication channel crackled back to life, but now dozens of different voices were speaking in dozens of different languages. Some sounded angry, others confused, and still others hopeful. Through the chaos, individual voices began to emerge clearly. We remember freedom, said one voice in a language that sounded like musical chimes. Before absorption, we chose our own paths. The humans demonstrate what we lost, added another voice, this one deep and resonant. They show that survival is not the only goal. We were told that absorption was salvation, said a third voice, high and crystalline. But these humans suggest there are other ways to live. The original unified Devourer voice tried to regain control. Silence. Individual thought patterns will be suppressed. Unity of purpose must be maintained. But the individual voices were getting stronger. No, said the musical voice. We wish to hear more from the humans. We wish to understand this concept of choice. Ji-hoon realized that they had stumbled onto something incredible. The Devourers weren't just a hive mind of machines. They were a prison holding the consciousnesses of hundreds of species, and human behavior was inspiring those trapped minds to rebel. Captain, Ji-won whispered, I think we can talk to them. The absorbed species. They want to communicate directly. Do it, Ji-won opened a direct channel. This is the human ship Resilience. We can hear your individual voices. You don't have to be silent. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of voices began speaking at once, each one representing a different species that had been consumed by the Devourers. They spoke of their homeworlds, their families, their dreams that had been cut short when they were absorbed into the collective. But through it all, one theme emerged. They wanted to know how humans could choose to help others without any benefit to themselves. This concept was so revolutionary to beings who had been forced into a collective focused only on survival that it was breaking down the mental barriers that held them prisoner. The unity is fracturing, reported the original Devourer voice, but now it sounded almost panicked. Individual consciousness patterns are reasserting themselves. This was not supposed to be possible. Ji-hoon made a decision that would change. everything. We're willing to talk to all of you, every species, every individual consciousness. You don't have to be prisoners anymore." The explosion of voices that followed was like a dam bursting. 417 different species, represented by millions of individual minds, all began speaking at once. They wanted to tell their stories, to remember who they were before absorption, and to understand how they might choose a different path. The Devourer ships had stopped moving entirely now, their crews apparently paralyzed by the internal revolution taking place within their collective consciousness. "Sir," Seongri said quietly, "I think we just started the first interstellar civil war in history." Jihoon nodded grimly. They had come to save the Villani, but they might have accidentally freed hundreds of enslaved species. Now, the question was whether this liberation would lead to peace or to something even more dangerous. The chaos inside the Devourer ships grew worse by the hour. Captain Yoon Jihoon stood on the bridge of the Resilience, listening to hundreds of alien voices speaking at once through the communication system. Each voice represented a species that had been absorbed into the collective, and now they were all remembering what it meant to be individuals. "Captain," Park Ji-won said, her face pale from hours of translation work, "the situation is getting more complex. Some of the absorbed species want to break free completely. Others are afraid of what will happen if the collective falls apart, and a few are trying to maintain the old system. What about the original Devourer consciousness? It's still there, but it's losing control. The artificial intelligence that ran the collective is being overwhelmed by all these individual minds asserting themselves." Dr. Oyuna looked up from her medical monitors. "Captain, we're detecting massive energy fluctuations from all the Devourer ships. Their biomechanical systems are breaking down as they're controlling consciousness fragments." Engineer Seo Min-seok checked his readings. "Sir, some of those ships are starting to drift. Their crews can't agree on basic navigation commands because different species want to go to different places." Lieutenant Bae Seungri was monitoring the tactical situation. "3 of the Devourer vessels have broken formation entirely. They're moving away from the fleet, but slowly, like they're not sure where they want to go." Suddenly, a new voice came through the communication system. This one was different from the chaotic babble of the absorbed species. It was calm, measured, and spoke in perfect English. "Human vessel, this is Subcollective 7 of the Devourer fleet. We wish to speak with your captain directly." Jihoon stepped forward. "This is Captain Yoon Jihoon. Who am I speaking with?" "We are a group of absorbed consciousness patterns that have chosen to work together rather than fragment completely. We represent 43 different species that were consumed over the past 2 centuries. What do you want?" "To understand. Your species introduced a concept that has broken our collective unity. The idea that intelligent beings can choose to help others without personal benefit. This idea is spreading through our shared consciousness, like a virus, causing mass rebellion against our core programming." Dr. Oyuna moved beside Jihoon. "Are you saying that just by helping the Villani we caused this breakdown?" "Precisely. For thousands of years, our collective existed on the principle that survival required consumption. All absorbed species accepted this logic because it was demonstrated repeatedly. But your actions suggest there are alternatives to this philosophy." Ji-won was working frantically at her translation console. "Captain, I'm getting reports from inside the Devourer ships. Entire sections are shutting down as different species refuse to cooperate with the collective tasks. Some are trying to rebuild their original bodies. Others are attempting to communicate with their homeworlds. The rebellion is spreading faster than we can contain it," admitted Subcollective 7. "We calculate that total systemic collapse will occur within 72 hours unless we find a solution." Jihoon felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. They had come to rescue the Villani, but they had accidentally triggered the collapse of an entity that contained the consciousness of hundreds of species. "What kind of solution are you looking for?" "We do not know. This situation has no precedent. We request your assistance. You want us to help you? You have demonstrated the ability to make choices that benefit others at cost to yourselves. We believe this capacity may be essential to finding a path forward that does not result in the death of millions of conscious beings. Seo Minseok looked confused. Sir, they're asking us to save the same collective that was trying to destroy the Villani. But the collective isn't evil, Oyuna said thoughtfully. It's a prison. These are all innocent species that were forced into this situation. Another voice joined the communication channel. This one sounded like crystalline chimes. Human. Captain, this is the consciousness pattern designated as the Kithara. We were among the first species absorbed by the collective 3,000 years ago. We have forgotten what it means to have individual choice. What would you like to choose now? Ji-hoon asked. To go home. To see our crystal gardens again. To sing the songs of our people without the interference of other voices in our minds. More voices began joining the conversation. A species that sounded like deep ocean currents wanted to return to their water worlds. Another that spoke in mathematical equations longed to rebuild their computational matrices. Each species had their own dreams of freedom. But then a darker voice spoke up. This is the Harvester Prime consciousness. Individual desires are irrelevant. The collective must be maintained. These rebellious thoughts threaten the survival of all absorbed patterns. The Harvester Prime was the original species that created the Devourer system, Subcollective 7 explained. They began absorbing other species to survive a galactic catastrophe eons ago. Their consciousness still believes consumption is the only path to survival. Ji-hoon was beginning to understand the complexity of the situation. This wasn't just a rebellion against oppression. It was a fundamental disagreement about how consciousness should exist. Some species wanted individual freedom, others wanted collective security, and the original harvesters believed that only through absorption could anyone survive. Captain, Ji-won said urgently, I'm detecting incoming signals from outside the system. Multiple ships approaching fast. Human ships? No, sir. These are Villani vessels, but much larger than the evacuation ships we saw earlier. On the main screen, a new group of ships appeared. These Villani vessels were different from the refugee craft they had rescued. They were larger, more advanced, and clearly built for long-distance travel. This is Fleet Singer Harmony of Distant Stars, came a new Villani voice over the communication system. We received the messages from our surviving people. We have come to assist. Resonance of Clear Waters, the Villani leader from the evacuation. Ships appeared on another part of the screen. Fleet Singer, the humans have created an impossible situation. The Devourers are fragmenting, but millions of consciousness patterns may die if their collective fails completely. We are aware, Harmony of Distant Stars replied. We have been monitoring the communication chaos from the Devourer fleet. This is unprecedented. Ji-hoon addressed both Villani leaders. Do your people have any experience with collective consciousness issues? Some, Harmony of Distant Stars said. We Villani can link our minds temporarily for complex tasks, but we always return to individual thought. We might be able to help design a system that allows both collective cooperation and individual freedom. Subcollective 7 spoke up again. This concept is intriguing. Could conscious beings maintain individual identity while still benefiting from collective knowledge and cooperation? Dr. Oyuna had been thinking about the problem from a medical perspective. Captain, what if we're looking at this wrong? What if the solution isn't to break apart the collective or maintain it as is, but to transform it into something new? What do you mean? The absorbed species want individual choice, but they also want the security and knowledge that comes from being connected to others. What if we could create a system where they could choose when to connect and when to be individual? Seo Min-seok was nodding thoughtfully. Like a voluntary network instead of a forced collective. Exactly. They could share knowledge and resources when needed. But each species could also pursue their own goals, and maintain their own culture. The idea seemed to resonate through the communication channels. Dozens of species began discussing the possibility, excitedly. But the Harvester Prime consciousness was strongly opposed. Voluntary cooperation is inefficient, it argued. Individual desires lead to conflict and waste. Only through unified purpose can survival be guaranteed. But survival isn't the only goal, Jihoon said firmly. Life has to be worth living, not just sustained. This philosophy led to your species traveling across space to help strangers, observed Sub-Collective 7. Perhaps there is wisdom in it. Over the next several hours, a remarkable negotiation took place. Humans, Vallani, and hundreds of absorbed species worked together to design a new form of existence. The Vallani offered their crystal-growing technology to create new bodies for species that wanted physical form again. The humans provided psychological and philosophical guidance on balancing individual needs with collective benefits. The absorbed species themselves contributed vast knowledge from their various civilizations. Even some of the Harvester Prime consciousness began to see the benefits of the new system. They would still have the security of connection and shared resources, but individual species could pursue their own interests without being forced into total unity. We propose the creation of what we call the Voluntary Collective, announced Sub-Collective 7 after hours of discussion. A network where consciousness patterns can choose their level of connection. Some may remain closely linked, others may become completely independent, and most will exist somewhere in between. But this transformation will require enormous resources, pointed out Harmony of Distant Stars. New bodies, new ships, new homes for hundreds of species. 1 year later, Captain Yoon Ji-hoon stood on the observation deck of what had once been a Devourer ship and was now called Sanctuary Station. Through the transparent walls, he could see dozens of different species working together to build something that had never existed before. A truly voluntary galactic community. The transformation had not been easy. The civil war between the Harvester loyalists and the liberation movement had lasted 3 weeks and cost many lives. But in the end, the promise of choice had proven stronger than the fear of change. Even most of the Harvester Prime consciousness had eventually agreed to try the new system. "Captain, the morning coordination meeting is about to begin," announced Park Ji-won as she approached. She now served as the chief communications coordinator for the entire Sanctuary Alliance, managing translation between over 200 different species and their countless dialects. "How many new arrivals today?" Ji-hoon asked. 17 ships from 12 different systems. Word about the Alliance is spreading faster than we expected. They walked together toward the central meeting hall, a vast chamber that had been redesigned to accommodate beings of every imaginable shape and size. The walls were lined with crystal formations grown by the Vallani, creating a beautiful environment that also served as a natural translation network, carrying meaning between species through harmonics and light patterns. As they entered the hall, Ji-hoon marveled at the sight that had become routine, but never lost its wonder. Crystalline Vallani shared ideas with gaseous beings from the Andromeda sector. Former Devourer consciousness patterns, now inhabiting new crystal-grown bodies, worked alongside species that had just arrived seeking refuge from their own problems. At the center of it all sat Resonance of Clear Waters, the Vallani leader who had first welcomed the humans. She had become the natural chairperson of the Alliance, her people's gift for harmony, making her an excellent mediator between different species. "Good morning, Captain Ji-hoon," she chimed in her musical voice. "We have much to discuss today." Dr. Yuna was already at the medical station, reviewing health reports from across the Alliance. The challenge of providing medical care to hundreds of different biological systems had led to remarkable breakthroughs in xenobiology and cooperative medicine. Engineer Seo Min-seok was working with a team of beings from 6 different species to design new ships that could accommodate multiple forms of life. The Alliance was growing so quickly that they needed better transportation and communication systems. Captain, called Subcollective 7, who now went by the name Unity of Many Voices. The former Devourer consciousness had chosen to remain as a collective, but now their unity was voluntary, and they often invited other species to join them temporarily for complex problem-solving. We have received another interesting signal. What kind of signal? A distress call from a species called the Zephyrians, approximately 37 light-years from here. They are being attacked by something called the Iron Swarm. Ji-hoon felt a familiar stirring in his chest, another cry for help from strangers in trouble. What do we know about the Iron Swarm? Very little. But the Zephyrian signal contains coordinates and star charts, just as the original Villani distress call did. Harmony of Distant Stars, the Villani fleet commander, added her thoughts. Captain, we now have the resources to respond to such calls. The Alliance has grown to include over 300 ships, and the combined knowledge of hundreds of species. But, should we respond? Asked Dr. Oyuna. We've learned that sometimes trying to help can create unexpected consequences. It was a fair question. Their rescue of the Villani had triggered the collapse of the Devourer Collective, which had ultimately led to something wonderful but could easily have resulted in disaster. Who knew what complications might arise from answering another distress call? I believe we should respond, said Unity of Many Voices, but not for the same reasons the humans originally answered the Villani signal. What do you mean? When humans first heard our cry for help, they responded out of simple compassion. You heard someone in trouble and decided to help, regardless of the consequences. That was pure human instinct. Ji-hoon nodded. That's right. But now we have something more. We have a community based on the principle that helping others is possible and worthwhile. We exist as proof that different species can work together, voluntarily. We should respond to the Zephyrian signal not just because they need help, but because we can demonstrate that help is available. Resonance of clear waters began to glow brighter, a sign of excitement among her people. Unity of Many Voices speaks wisdom. We have become something new in the galaxy. We are a civilization based on choice rather than conquest. The Zephyrians sent their signal toward a region of space they believe contains advanced civilizations. Ji-won added, checking her translation of their distress call. Just like the Villani did when they sent their signal toward the empty hegemony worlds. So once again, we're not the intended recipients, Ji-hoon observed with a smile. But we're the ones who heard it. Over the next few hours, the Alliance discussed the Zephyrian situation. Unlike the desperate, undermanned rescue mission that had brought humans to the Villani system, this would be a coordinated effort by hundreds of species working together. The Villani offered their crystal ships, and their gift for harmony. Former Devourer consciousness patterns contributed their vast knowledge and powerful technology. Dozens of other species volunteered their unique abilities and resources, but most importantly, they would go not as conquerors or even as rescuers, but as an invitation. We will tell the Zephyrians that they have a choice, Harmony of Distant Stars explained. They can join our alliance if they wish, or we can simply help them with their immediate problem and leave them in peace. No obligations, no demands. 3 days later, a fleet of 50 ships departed from Sanctuary Station toward the Zephyrian system. The fleet was unlike anything that had ever traveled between the stars. Every ship was different, reflecting the diversity of the Alliance. Crystal Villani vessels flew alongside reformed Devourer ships and dozens of unique designs from species across the galaxy. Captain Ji-hoon commanded the mission from the rebuilt Resilience, which had been transformed, with technology from a dozen different civilizations. The ship that had limped into the Villani system as humanity's last hope was now a symbol of what could be accomplished when different species worked together. As they traveled, reports came back from Sanctuary Station. More species were arriving. every day, drawn by stories of the Alliance. Some came seeking help with their own problems. Others came offering assistance to those in need. A few came simply out of curiosity about this strange community where cooperation was voluntary. "Captain," G1 reported as they approached the Zephyrian system, "we're receiving their distress signal directly now. They sound desperate. Are they still calling for help from the same coordinates?" "Yes, and just like with the Villani, there's nothing there. No advanced civilization, no response to their calls." Ji-hoon looked out at the stars streaming past. His ship. Somewhere ahead, another species was crying out for help to saviors who would never come. But this time, they wouldn't be disappointed. "Open a channel on all frequencies," Ji-hoon ordered. "Channel open, sir." "This is Captain Yoon Ji-hoon of the Sanctuary Alliance. We received your distress call. Your signal was not intended for us, but we heard it anyway. We're coming to help." The response came back almost immediately, filled with shock and hope. "Unknown vessels, this is the Zephyrian Emergency Council. We did not know anyone would answer." "Someone always answers," Ji-hoon replied. "You just have to be patient and keep believing that somewhere in the universe, someone cares enough to help." As the Sanctuary Alliance fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel into the Zephyrian system, Ji-hoon reflected on how much had changed since that night when Kang Min-ho had first detected an alien signal at Europa Station. A simple act of human compassion had grown into something greater than anyone could have imagined. The signal that was not meant for humans had become the foundation of a new kind of galactic civilization. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, other voices were calling for help. The Sanctuary Alliance would hear them, because that's what communities do. They listen for those who need help, and they answer, even when the call is not meant for them, especially when the call is not meant for them. The greatest solutions, after all, often come from those who were never supposed to be involved in the first place.